change is not necessarily the formula for growth. I think it's a healthy tension between being content and being anxious. Of what do we need to do to get better today? And being open to that and being humble enough to realize that you really don't know what you don't know. And so really working on focusing on what's important, what's not urgent, and making progress against that at all times.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Adapting to change is not something that just happens. It's actually something that's very intentional inside of our organizations, inside of our culture and our leadership. When you think about adapting to change, you think about what does it take for you as a leader to be the person that really does inspire people to be more adaptive, to be agile when necessary, to really accept changes as a good thing. Well, it all starts with you, leading by example. You've got to be a leader who truly understands that change is the way forward. You've got to hire people that are willing to accept that change is good, and you've got to develop them and lead them in such a way that change and adaptation are a part of their natural way of growing. When I say all that, does it challenge you as a leader? Well, today we have Renzi Stone. He's the founder of Saxum. They're an integrated marketing PR company that has a lot of impact in the world, but also they've had tremendous growth as a company. 45 employees, and they've grown really fast. But what's really impressive about their growth is 9-time consecutive making it to the Inc. 5000. Now, it gets harder and harder every year. One of the things that Renzi talked to me about was the need for adaptation. Adaptation to change is something that is baked into all of the way they work and why they work together as a team. And he's learned this through working on himself first. All this inside today's episode. Now, let me pause here for a second here. I want you to think about this podcast as the key for growth and leadership for your company. I'd love for you to think about someone that you would love to introduce this podcast to. We'd love to grow and reach the right people. It's not about the vanity of reaching more people, but we want the right people to tune in and receive this and be a part of our audience. We'd love for you to think of one person to introduce Grow Think Tank to so that you can share that with them. Now, here's the interview with Renzi. Before we dive into the interview, I wanted to remind you that you can actually get a tool that I've been working with clients with for the last couple of years. I've refined this tool that's gone through several iterations. Now we have it completely automated. You can actually go online and fill out the leadership quiz. To get the leadership quiz, just go to theleadershipquiz.com. That's pretty easy, right? Theleadershipquiz.com. What you will get when you do that is you will answer a few questions. You will see where you rate based on the core principles of fast growth companies. If you're ready to grow your company or you want to see where you are, then make sure you go to theleadershipquiz.com. Inside it, you will get insight to where you are, understand where you want to improve, and you will get them mapped into the 10 areas that are most specific to fast growth companies. Again, go to theleadershipquiz.com and you can get that right now. Renzi, how are you?
Gene, doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Excited to talk about leadership and culture in a fast growth world. When you decided to be a founder of this company, Saxum, tell us a little bit about what you intended to create at Saxum.
Well, first of all, I'm an accidental founder. I didn't set out to start a company when I was 25 years old, which is 17 years old this next month. And what I saw was an opportunity. And I had worked for a sports marketing company. I had also worked for a public affairs company out of Washington, D.C., doing quantitative and qualitative research. And here in the middle of the country, I'm in Oklahoma City, but in the middle of the country in general, in the early 2000s, I saw a couple trends. Trend number one, I saw that advertising agencies were really narrow in how they were serving their clients. If it wasn't a media buy or a campaign, it probably wasn't something they were interested in. And then I saw public relations companies And in this region of the country, there were more public relations people than public relations companies. And so I really loved all aspects of reputation, of strategy, of how to help somebody using marketing and communication grow their footprint, whether it was getting somebody to say yes to something, influencing a purchase decision. And so I created a business truly around what I thought my skill sets were, was pretty good on my feet, was a deep strategic thinker, did my homework, understood context of how things fit together. I was smart enough to know what I didn't know, so I could plug a few of those freelancers in. And I was able to, thankfully, I feel very blessed, take an idea, turn it into a business that had one employee, me, and over 17 years, we've been able to grow by adding one client here, one talented person. And if anything, I've just now surrounded myself with a whole bunch of very talented people that I get to work with on a day in and day out basis.
One of the things that's really impressive about what you guys have done is 9-time consecutive Inc. 5000. From a math play, it gets harder and harder each year. What do you kind of attribute consistent growth like that to?
Well, I think Covey's first habit is be proactive. And I think that may be the thing that I've been best at over the years. Gene, I played college basketball at the University of Oklahoma, and we made the NCAA tournament all 4 of the years that I played. I was captain my senior year, really, really good teams. But one thing I learned from sports is that if you're ever comfortable, it's probably a pretty good indication that you're on the wrong track. And so having that tension between being content and being anxious is a pretty good formula for growth. And so I think if I look back on 17 years of running this business and the 9 years that we've been on the Inc. 5000 list, is I think, I've never rested on yesterday's accomplishments. That's not to mean that I just come into the office every day on a tear about what we need to do different, because change is not necessarily the formula for growth. I think it's a healthy tension between being content and being anxious of what do we need to do to get better today, and being open to that and being humble enough to realize that you really don't know what you don't know. And so really working on focusing on what's important, what's not urgent, and making progress against that at all times.
Now, hold on for a second. Renzi just said comfortable is the wrong track. Now, many leaders believe that as they've worked hard, they should have the payoff, right? They should have time to relax. And I understand the thinking because I fell into that too. In fact, I wrote about it in my book, The Trap of Success. But you've got to understand that when you are too comfortable, you're not growing. When you are really seeking comfort, it is really a dangerous place behind the evolution of who you are, and by extension, the evolution of the business. So what do you do instead? Well, in my book, I wrote about get comfortable being uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Make being uncomfortable a more natural state, something that you understand that's the direction forward. What Renzi was talking about was he really saw the value of staying uncomfortable. And that was really accepting adaptation and change inside of his own leadership and his own company. Back to the interview. I just had a conversation with a client around that very thing, like literally before I got on to record this with you. When you think about change and being adaptable, how important has that been through this whole COVID experience that you and your team has been going through?
Well, the most popular word in business communication right now is agile. Are you agile enough to make the changes that need to be made as realities shift? I would say, and I would say I certainly have subscribed to the idea that you have to be agile. But what I think we're experiencing here is something that was already there before COVID, which is we truly are still in the dawn of this new era where technology enables productivity and efficiency and communication in ways that we never imagined before. And as I was sitting on Zoom screens looking at people like you all day long, Gene, including my clients and my colleagues, I think we really started thinking what this latest iteration of this generational change looks like for our business, for our clients' business. And to answer the question, I feel like we've been very good at anticipating what the future may look like, and we've had enough courage to take a few steps that direction. And so I think what I've seen with a lot of our clients, as well as a lot of just human nature in general, is we may see where things are going, but very few people have the courage to actually take action. Taking action requires a commitment. And so I think we've been very good at taking action. Now, have we taken as much action as we needed to? I don't know. I mean, that will play out over time. I feel like we're taking about the right amount of action. But every business book I ever read said that coming out of eras like this, there's incredible growth opportunities. And so I'm doing my best to try to participate.
Well, I don't think you're wrong in that. And a lot of people have been talking about opportunity for a long time. So now we've kind of get to really start to, hopefully, as we're pulling out of this COVID thing, hopefully we don't have this resurgence that could happen. What are the opportunities, as a team and what you're doing within leadership that you could share with us?
Well, the first thing I'm doing is I'm having 1,000 small conversations with all of my key stakeholders. A small conversation beats a big conversation every day. An informal conversation beats a formal conversation every day. So, Gene, we set up this interview for today. I had a pre-screen where I talked to your producer for a little while. Now we're having a formal conversation on your show. But if you and I were working together on a daily basis, you and I would probably text back and forth 3 or 4 times, and maybe we get on the phone 3 or 4 times, and then maybe we'd exchange some emails, sharing our ideas, and this interview would be even better than it was right now. Well, it's no different than in the real world. I think we tend, because most of us love efficiency, we tend to want to have formal conversations, especially in formal relationships. And so the thing I've done with my team, as well as my clients, is I've opened up the channels for informal, frequent conversation. Informal, frequent conversation. And then I've reminded people that you have to listen as much as you talk. Unfortunately, in this scenario, I'm doing most of the talking. But if you get into the informal conversations that are frequent and you're a good listener, you can really uncover what people's fears and anxieties are. And then you, as a professional services company, you can hopefully help them solve those.
One of the things that Renzo just talked about was opening up channels to informal communication. I get asked all the time, what's the right frequency to give employee feedback? Now, what they're looking for is, do we do this yearly? Do we do this twice a year? Do we do it more often? What the real answer to that is, feedback should come in more bite-sized elements. You should be telling people what they're doing well, where they can improve, and these small conversations, these informal conversations, instead of waiting for the formality of an employee review. Now, when I say that, it troubles a lot of people because they like the structure of it. There's a lot of work to prepare for those formal employee evaluations. But here's the flip side of that. What if you didn't have to do all that preparing? What if you were constantly tuned in with people and you were having these small informal conversations and they were able to grow from that? And you would be able to see where they are, what they're troubled with. And they don't have to be long. They can be very short, but you can have more informal conversations that allow people to grow. Back to the interview with Renzi. Renzi, one of the things that you're highlighting here is what I get a lot of resistance from my own clients first coming to me. They're like, I don't have time for these small conversations. I don't have time. I've got so much email to do. I've got so many meetings to attend. And when you hear that, probably with your own leadership, what are your responses back to your team?
Well, I empathize, first of all. You name one smart, accomplished, driven leader who says, "Oh, I've got all the time in the world." They're very few and far between. We have a client who is one of the top 25 billionaires in the world, and he always seems to have time. Always has time. Anytime I email him, he emails me right back. And I've always been curious about how much time he has. This guy owns oil and gas assets. He owns banks. He owns, dozens of companies. But then during the pandemic, I asked him to come on and speak to a group that I was hosting. And probably a moment of weakness for him, he wrote 3 paragraphs to me about how he didn't have enough time. And I realized even him, who I thought had all the time in the world, doesn't have time. So my answer is, it's like anything else. You spend time where you want to. And so there's a discipline issue with people that don't have time. They do have time. We all have the same amount of time. They're just spending it differently.
So to take that a little bit further, these informal conversations, they take time, but what's the real payoff for the community or the culture of the company?
Well, the payoff is less chance of missing what the true motivation is behind other people's actions, right? So if I talk to you 5 times leading up to today's show, I would have a better sense of what your true motivations are, because you and I would have lots of interactions. I would be able to pick up on nonverbal cues. I'd be able to pick up on language you use repeatedly. I'd be able to pick up on themes to the conversation. When you just have one conversation, we all are wired to put our best foot forward, and we all have preservation walls that go up because you and I don't know each other, and I want you to think the best of me. Well, what do I really want to get out of this? So when we have frequent communication between us, I think you have a better chance to really understand people's motivation. Ultimately, that benefits the organization because there's less confusion about what expectations are. Now, I'll tell you, I think that every small conversation can also be short. So I work really hard at not having long, frequent conversations, but short, frequent conversations.
Love that. I want to take you into, I don't know if this is a new direction or not, but I'm always looking for uncommon approaches. We've been talking about adaptability and flexibility inside of all these changes. What uncommon approaches have you taken, Renzi?
Well, I think another thing I have learned about high achieving professionals, which are the type of people that work at my company, is that adults learn through doing. And so I can lecture them all day long about small conversations and this is the best way to do task X, Y, or Z, or here's a strategy we should do. But people learn from doing their own, experimenting and making their own decisions. And so one of the things I've done is just try to remain open-minded, that there are lots of ways to accomplish the big goal. And so as a leader, if I can give the framework and then really try to back up and let people solve problems in their own way, that's one of the tools I've used. I've also just tried new things. Anytime you have routine can invite in complacency that I talked about earlier. And so trying to mix it up, keep people on their toes, not in a bad way, but in a good way. That tension that I talked about is another thing I've used.
When you think about your own journey of leadership, Renzi, you've had this business for a long time. You described starting small, it grew to one person, it grew again, a few clients here and there. But the consistent growth of this, what are the things that have changed in your leadership model that you could share with us?
Well, I'd say what's changed in my leadership model has been directly correlated to my maturity as an adult and as a professional. When you have children, you uncover a whole new part of who you are, the good and bad parts of your personality. When you get married, you adjust. When you have failure professionally, and Gene, before we got on, you shared with me a little bit of your story that you wrote about in your book. And so I would say that as I've matured as a person, I've taken in all these inputs, all these experiences over the years. I'd love to think that I'm more patient. I'm more humble. I am more open to new information than I was when I was younger. And I am sure when I look back on this moment in time, 10 years from now, I'll think, oh my gosh, all the things I learned since I was younger. There's a reason why in society we have elders. In every society of all time, the older people have these positions of wisdom, and it's not because they're any different than you or me. They just have a lot of miles under those tires, and so there's a lot to learn when you have mentors. So I'm always trying to pick brain of people usually about 10 years older than me, because I think much older than that, whoever you're talking to can't remember back. I can remember 10 years ago a lot clearer than I can remember 20 years ago. So that's another thing I've used, is talking to mentors. And all those things combined, I think, have made me a better leader, hopefully have created value for my clients and my team.
Well, it's been a great conversation, Renzi, to talk about your journey of leadership, talking about change and adaptability and being agile. One final kind of moment here. How do you really develop the new class of leaders across your organization? What are the modes that you use that have found that worked?
Well, so every upcoming leader needs a mentor. So I just touched on that. So if you don't give up and coming leaders the opportunity to grow with challenge, you'll never develop them. I think a huge aspect to future leadership is really drive. And I'm not telling any leader anything they don't already know. If you're not motivated from within to grow, it's going to be pretty hard to grow into a leadership position. I certainly, when I'm telling my kid to get out of bed or to do his homework, or I'm encouraging him to get that workout in, dad can't be the one to make that motivation work. It's got to be from within. And so my advice for any upcoming leader out there is if you're motivated from within first, then you can find the mentors that can help guide and shape and form you and point you the right direction.
Renzi, thanks for being here on the podcast and sharing your wisdom.
Gene, thank you. Take care. Be safe.
Another favorite podcast of mine, because I love talking to those people in the trenches, in the day-to-day, helping their company grow, creating a great place for their employees, and adapting to change is something we all have to do through COVID. Now, when you think about what you're doing as a leader, make sure that you continue to evolve, that you continue to work on yourself as hard as you work on your business. My job is to work with leaders and connect with them at a deeper level to find out who they are, to really be the fullest expression of themselves, to expand in such a way that they are able to engage the team to expand. Now, that is key to your own growth. Make sure you reach out to me. You can check out more content we have at genehammett.com, or you can engage in a conversation with me. Just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. When you think about growth, you think about leadership, think about the Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.